Okay. It is this time. Call the meeting to order of the City of Harvard Administration Committee, January 15th, 2025, 6:30 PM. Roll call, Carncross, Gorman, Perkins, Haderlein. Committee all present. Any public? No public, so no public comment. Did folks have a chance to read the minutes from the November meeting? Any
Make a motion to
questions?
approve them.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions before we vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes approved. Okay, item number 4 is a discussion on changing the city clerk to an appointed position. There is a memo on this, and just a reminder that this was on the ballot in November and failed. But there really wasn't any outreach about it. And there was a lot of just sort of general outreach in the general community that just vote no was sort of a sentiment. But Mike, Lou, did you want to speak to this?
Well, this the memo is just to serve as a quick recap and provide options for the committee to consider. One of which is to potentially go and do this again, either in the 26 fall election or the 27 spring election. And that
So it's too late to do it this spring?
it's too late to do it for this spring.
Okay.
Plus, I think it would create a little bit of confusion if we did it last minute without having an opportunity to just spread some information about it. Because I think that's what hurt it last time is we had some information available, and we're because we can't directly campaign for or against it. We had an article that was supposed to be out in the paper, and then the article got cut down to, I think, a paragraph. So that too leads to a little confusion. So at least in the future, if the committee wants to pursue it again in 26 or 27, we'll make sure to put together a communication packet to go with it.
I think some of the constituents that I spoke to about it, one, they didn't really understand why the city was asking this. Most of them assume that the city clerk is a full-time position, and which it's not.
Right.
In fact, most of the things that the city clerk does is done by staff, and then the clerk certifies it. So, essentially the clerk's job is to certify all of the documentation.
Sign stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because our administrative assistant was also our city clerk, or I should say our city clerk was also our administrative assistant, because she's retired from administrative assistant, people assumed that her full-time job was city clerk. And so they couldn't reconcile why it would make sense to do this. So I think it's just a matter of education to the populace to understand why the city's asking this, and that it would kind of make it was very convenient for the city that our administrative assistant was the city clerk, and now that that's going to change, it's going to be much less convenient to get documentation certified, because we have to wait till the clerk comes into the office to do that. So
Right.
and sign checks, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of perfunctory duties that they do. One of them is signing checks. So they are a signee on all of our checks. The city clerk is, and so all the checks have to go through them. And there are a lot of checks to be signed, so, and that can hold up getting payments out to
And is that
our
a
suppliers.
statutory thing?
I don't know the answer to that, Lisa.
Clerk is statutory.
Is it? Okay. I
Sign checks?
No, the role of the city clerk is statutory. That's why you have to have a referendum if you're not home rule.
Right,
to
but
eliminate.
the clerk's duties are they defined in statute?
I believe so. I had a copy of it and then I left it back on my.
I don't know if signing checks is a statutory requirement, but from the city's perspective, the mayor, the treasurer, and the city clerk all sign checks
Right.
to ensure that you've got, checks and balances.
It may be codified in our ordinance as one of the duties, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
To
We
look
can
into
look
that.
that up for you.
Because, yeah, I'm just, since now it was easy, with Lori, because when Andy was clerk and Lori was the administrative assistant, she did everything. And Andy just came in and signed stuff.
For the
really.
most part, that's
Yeah.
correct. But I will say, when Mr. Wells was the city clerk, he he
Yeah,
had been it
he did.
very well. He did a very good job at it
Yeah,
because
he
knew
did understand it.
he knew the statutes.
Yes.
So,
Yes, he did. So it was an easy transition then for
It was,
for
yes.
Lori to, because
So-
she had already been doing
That's
the
correct.
lion's share of
So
the job.
when the new clerk is elected, whoever that may be, come April, staff will still continue to do, prepare the ordinances, prepare all the paperwork, and then present to the clerk for signatures.
Right.
It was just convenient when Lori was here because she was in the building all the time because
Right.
her full-time job was here.
Yeah.
That's not usually the case when it's an elected person. And so there is some advantages from just purely from a process, moving processes forward that that person was always present during
But-
work.
But now here's a question. So let's say the referendum had passed
Mhm.
and the clerk became just a staff person. And so then Jeanette would,
Well, assuming
Probably, yeah.
assuming we would have appointed Jeanette, but I
Right.
think that was the expectation.
yeah.
Yes.
So then just in theory, then Jeanette would have been the clerk. Would then Jeanette, who I think reports to Deb, be signing checks?
As a city clerk, she would. Yes.
Yeah,
What's that?
actually, the clerk and deputy
Okay.
clerk report.
Okay, so the administrative assistant reports to you, not to,
So as it sits right now, so when Lori was here, she would still report to me as both the clerk and
Okay.
the administrative assistant.
okay,
With if everything stays the same, or if Jeanette were to be the clerk, then it would be the same thing. If it was an appointed position, then the clerk would report to me, but the clerk would be appointed by the mayor with consent of the council.
Okay.
And then this way you still have your separation when it comes to checks.
Had the referendum passed, Lori would continue to finish out her term, which
Right.
ends April 30th,
yeah,
and then we would have made the appointment thereafter. Now that the referendum did not pass, there's going to be a vote to determine
Right,
who that
right.
is, and that person would take that role May 30th or April.
May-
I'm sorry, May
May
1st.
1st. Okay,
I will add that a couple of the discussions that I had after the election related to this referendum, in both cases, neither of the people had any idea what the clerk did, and in both cases they voted it down because they did not want, their presumption was that it was a legislative position that they were having taken away from them, as opposed to it being more of an administrative position that isn't really affected by whether, the election or not. So based on how the discussion went and how upset they were, really what their politics didn't matter. My suggestion, take it for what it is, would be that we should attempt to put this onto a consolidated election in April as opposed to a midterm or general election season when people tend to vote against everything because they don't care what it is. They don't like anything that's going on and they want everything to go away. So
Well, it's like
My-
with the 1%. I mean, that didn't work on the general election.
we tend
Right.
from what I've seen, we tend to see a lot less people vote in the consolidated election, but those that do tend to be much more informed. As opposed to the general election, which brings in a lot of people due to the state and federal elections, and then they are woefully uninformed on the local and county stuff that's going on.
So do we need to do anything right now?
No,
Okay.
that's why it's listed as a discussion.
And, all right,
Okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Okay. Item number 5, discussion on section 205H, electronic attendance at meetings, rules, ordinance. So, go ahead.
So, it was brought to, the mayor's attention about this, whether or not the ordinance needed to be looked at, and, staff took the opportunity to review both the state statute and the ordinance, and actually, and this is why it's a discussion item, I'm looking for a little direction. You don't necessarily need to change the ordinance, because the statute, says that unless advance notice is impractical. The issue that we have is that the agenda needs to be posted 48 hours in advance. And the way the ordinance is written is that you need to give notice before the 48 hours so that you can add that an agenda item to allow the council to vote, to allow a member to attend electronically. Now, the reason why I say that you don't necessarily have to change the ordinance is you can have it as a standing practice to have it as a line item on the agenda. And then just like after a consent agenda, where you can have a separate discussion. If it's not needed, it's not needed, and you just move on. This would allow somebody to within the 48-hour window, to just notify the clerk that they're not going to be made available, and then it could be discussed at the meeting to vote on it, because it's a standing line item.
Because it's not mandated under the state law that it be 48 hours.
It is mandated. It's mandated to say that you have to, unless there's no way to give advance notice, it is allowable. But they also put some verbiage in here to make sure it's not just because you're running late.
Right, but I think, the state statute, I don't think says anything about 48 hours.
Oh shoot! I think it does. I thought I had that. I know the state that our ordinance does say 48 hours.
Our
My
ordinance
recommendation would be
does.
just remove the 48 hours out of our ordinance, and that unties your hands.
Or again, you could just leave it as a standing item.
You could do that, but I think if you codified it in the ordinance on 2A, then and remove the 48-hour notice from our ordinance,
Yeah.
then, it would allow someone to call for whatever reason, say, hey, I had an emergency that took place this afternoon, but I still wanted to attend the meeting. Can I do it electronically?
Yeah.
And it handcuffs you.
As long as it doesn't violate the statute, I'm fine with changing the ordinance.
Yeah.
Then it's a non-issue that we don't have to deal with
Yeah.
2-3 years from now or whatever.
I'd recommend you direct staff to change the ordinance accordingly and bring it to council for a vote.
Well, I think we should. I think that this is something that's worth doing with some urgency to get through, only because we have had a couple of cases where we've had committee meetings where we're down to 2 people and we don't have a quorum, and it would be great for city business if we did, because we need to vote and now we can't. So, yeah, I think that this would be great if we can get it through, make it a lot more convenient.
Yeah, and I think our 48-hour, that language is, we're an outlier.
I think it handcuffs us.
It does.
Well, totally.
does.
It totally
Yeah.
prevents anybody who's suffering from illness. I mean, that's the other thing. If you have a communicable disease, or virus.
I don't want you here.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. We
Right.
don't want you here, but if you're healthy enough to attend, but you're contagious, then that would be a perfect,
Yes.
a perfect situation to apply for. So yeah, it
right.
makes that impossible to do. So it's kind of like, what's the
Right.
point of having it if
Yeah,
you
it's
can't
like,
even do
well,
it?
you can't plan, and especially with a meeting on Tuesday, and then no one's working over the weekend, so does that mean that Friday you have to say that
I'm going to be
you're-
sick on
I'm
Monday.
going to
on
be sick
Friday.
on Tuesday. I'm pretty sure I'm going to, I'm going to have COVID by Tuesday, and I'm not going to be able to come to the council meeting. Yeah,
And then, like what Lou was saying, wouldn't that be safe to put that in the agenda for especially city council, not like the committee, but for that, you said consent, could that be before then? Because a lot of times they vote for consent as well.
So you could do it like right after, or right before public comment, or
Yeah.
right after roll call would be
Yeah.
the preferred.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be bad to just have it as a standing. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to have it as a standing part of the agenda
not
anyway.
anything we can bypass it,
Yeah, you can just
right?
dispense of it. If
It's
not.
just, we don't need to
Yeah.
do
Right.
anything.
Just like right now,
Like
we don't have
public
any
comment.
public comment.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
was
so
just
you
gonna say
can-
that.
yeah.
So then there's no need to change the ordinance, we just make it a standing policy to have.
I
Let's
still
do-
feel like you should change the ordinance.
Right.
to
Let's do
reflect
both.
that and remove
Yeah,
the
to-
48 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, to take
Just
out the
because
48
someone's
hours,
gonna be
yeah,
say in the ordinance, well,
That way you have consistency.
yeah,
right.
you got the 48, someone's gonna be like, what?
Right.
Did they get 48? They just called in now.
And then
Right.
to leave it as a standing line item on the agenda.
Well,
'Cause
then
the
it also,
issue-
then it stands out as a reminder to, like, right in the beginning of the meeting that, like, hey, we need to take care of this part because they may have told you, a half hour before the meeting and it didn't have a chance to get on the agenda, so you may forget. So
Does that
I-
apply to committees,
It
meetings
should,
as well?
Yes.
Committees
yes.
and council?
So what I would have is the language state as it does here, so necessary communication can be arranged. So when you make that declaration to the city clerk that you can't attend, you need to provide a phone number so we can call you. If you don't provide a phone number, we can't.
Right.
now, if we move into something like closed session, we would need, does that person stay on the line?
They would.
And they would
as
still
if
be-
they're in the meeting.
Okay, all right. Well, just
So-
because technically, we may go into separate meetings or separate hearings. Do we need to disconnect and recall them, or
I don't think so.
I just want
no.
to make sure that it's not
It's
something.
as if they're sitting in their seat.
Okay. I would
it's
assume so, but
it's as if they were sitting in their seat.
Well, and internally.
statutes are weirdly written in ways that sometimes you have to do crazy stuff just to make sure that you're doing it right.
Is this your good callback numbers, just in case we get disconnected?
Yeah,
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but the reason why to have it as a standing line item, just in that case, is because you do have to have it on the agenda to be able to vote on it.
Yep.
And then the other thing is we'll have to change our internal practice, because it does state that if you do have someone over the phone like that, we have to save all recordings, audio and visual. So we'll just have to make sure internally to follow that as well. Should the ordinance pass.
and does this ordinance only apply to telephone communication, or would we be able to use?
No, any electronic,
Okay, so somebody could Zoom
correct.
call in. Okay.
Assuming that we had the
Yeah,
technology.
right now I
to
don't
do
think
that.
we do, correct?
Well, just that way we don't have to.
Yeah.
I guess I'm asking.
Electronic.
Yeah, I'm
so
thinking
that
just
includes
future proof,
television.
because we could change that
video.
system
Yeah.
a year from now, and now we got to go back and rewrite the wording to make sure it makes sense. So.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, okay,
I've got the general direction to move forward. I'll get something drafted. I'll try to circulate it with the committee, and then we'll put it on the next agenda, the next council agenda.
so I'm just, I have a question. 2D says, after establishing that there is a quorum physically present at a meeting where a member desires to attend electronically, the presiding officer shall state that. So does there have to be a quorum of people in the room?
Correct.
So for a committee meeting, if it's four and there were only
Established
two,
quorum.
with the electronic.
electronic.
So it doesn't help
So if
with
we
the
don't, yeah, so if we
committee
don't have
to
a
get a
quorum, we don't have
quorum.
a quorum.
If you didn't have a quorum, you wouldn't be able to vote.
Okay,
So,
so having someone electronically, they don't add
So
to,
if we don't have a quote, it doesn't quote.
Yeah.
If we have a quorum, if we don't have a quorum, they can't.
yeah,
They
you're not
are-
voting
They can't join
anyway.
the meeting regardless.
Right.
They're a,
Yeah, because they're, yeah,
because you have to vote to allow them to come.
and that's in the that's in the state statute that we have to
Right.
vote them in.
okay. Okay, so much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, sounds like we need to have a motion to direct staff to amend.
We need a
You
motion.
don't
No.
need
Just
a
have
motion.
to direct,
It was a
right?
No
discussion.
motion.
so you
Okay,
just-
discussion, so
yeah.
we're just giving direction to staff
Yeah.
to, okay, okay,
Vote on it in the next committee meeting when they bring it to us.
okay. Sounds great.
Do you want to come back to the committee or go straight to
You
council?
can go to
I don't-
council.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
don't care. That's kind of a,
Assuming we can get that done by the end of the month. we'll have it.
That sounds great, thank you.
maybe I'll call in so I can vote on it. Just for the irony of it. Sorry.
I'll test it, you know.
Yeah.
I'll notify you, I'll notify you 50 hours in advance that I'll be,
Yes,
or get 2
Last
hour,
call in the background or
yeah,
something.
2
Yeah.
hour, two, give me
You
a
have
2
to
hour
meet the
buffer.
criteria to be able to do
right.
I was coughing, I swear, that wasn't what you heard.
Family or other emergency. Yeah. It's pretty broad.
Can't find my pants. How about that?
There
That's
you
good.
go. That's an emergency.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 6, locally imposed grocery sales tax.
Yay.
I think this is Deb.
This is something we talked about, I think, last October, November, House Bill, excuse me,
Yep.
3144, passed and was signed into law in August. We were notified by the IML that part of that bill allowed for local government, well, the bill itself, the state's going to do away with the 1% sales tax on grocery. But part of that bill was allowing local communities, both non-home rule and home rule, to go ahead and implement the tax locally without a referendum, which was very nice. It saves us a lot of steps, but we do have to adopt a resolution, which they provided a sample copy of, and Jeanette has typed up in your packet. If we get this passed, filed into the state by October, then we can start collecting that 1% right away in January, which is the same, January 26th, which is the same month the state will stop collecting it. If we don't make that deadline, then we go into the April for our first collection. So we don't want to miss that sales tax. So I'm asking that this be approved and then sent to council for approval so that we can meet those filing requirements if you'd like to maintain that 1% revenue that we currently have.
I thought we did this.
We talked about
Oh,
it.
yeah, we only talked.
We didn't actually, we talked about it
Well,
like
while we were
back in the
talking,
fall.
I thought we did it, you know what I mean? And that we were pretty much 100% on board to do it.
I think we were, we just have to actually adopt the ordinance now. So we have to make it
And I don't think
official.
it was actually an item that we could technically vote on.
Yeah, it
was
wasn't
like-
an
it was like
action
new
item.
bit, Yeah.
Because we didn't have the ordinance prepared at the time.
Right. It's quite an involved ordinance.
Yeah, it was nice of them to provide it for
Yeah.
us. All we had to do is change it to our own format.
Pretty
Right.
much state playing politics.
It was nice of them to make themselves heroes and us the villain just
Yeah.
because they could.
Yes. Yes,
Much
thank you.
appreciated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a hot topic at the mayor's caucus.
I mean, it's great that they didn't force us to do it as a referendum because I think if they had, they might as well have just done away with it and not even allowed that because it'd get shot down
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And then everybody'd be asking why their roads aren't fixed and why their streets are falling apart and their sidewalks are falling apart. So it's like, well,
Well,
same old conversation we've been having for how many years now?
forever.
So we just need a motion to approve the ordinance so we can
Yes.
move forward. Well, then I'll motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay. On to council. Item number 7, declare surplus property.
So we found 2 more phones.
I just read that.
And you found a truck.
And well, we've got a truck. So what in researching, or as we're looking through it to be more efficient, what we found is that the Explorer that used to be in the police department that went into community development for Donovan to use, he would rather use the admin or the code enforcement squad car. And so that vehicle, the Explorer is going to head over to Public Works, which means the truck that Rob is using is going to go down one, which means we actually have a truck that's lower down that needs to be surplused out. That one is actually missing, or needs plywood for a floorboard. It's that bad.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
And
It was like
then
my Impala when I finally got rid of it.
the John Deere, the 97 John Deere is actually in the shop right now. It's got a value of about 5,000, but and Debbie, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think it had like what $10,000 or $15,000 worth of work that needed to be done. So, and it's not going to get any better. So the dealership is willing to actually buy it off our hands for parts.
For 2,000, right?
For 5.
2.
2. I'm sorry, 2. Okay, that's a discussion that needs to be done again. Anyway, but before we can do that, it is a piece of city equipment that needs to be declared surplus. And then there's some 8 older pieces of equipment that they just recently found. We don't use them, so we just need to
Those
surplus
the
them.
end of the world masks?
Yeah.
Face pieces?
Yep.
Everyone's getting rid
Okay.
of them because no one used them when
Right.
federal government gave everyone those.
And so what we'd like to do is destroy them, but before we can destroy them, we need to have them declared surplus so they don't end up in somebody's hands. They're just not useful.
Okay.
So that's that.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion second. Any other comments?
You should state what your motion is there. Okay.
So much easier earlier. I'll make a motion to declare surplus property of the Apple phones, 2006 Chevy Silverado, the 1997 John Deere 410, and the Avon Technical Product face pieces.
I amend my second to include everything that Matt just said.
Thank you both.
You get an easy way out.
Yeah. Any additional comments, questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. We've declared surplus property. Item number 8 is strategic vision.
We have a vision and a strategic.
I'm just looking at the minutes. So I understand that the compensation study is starting?
Yes, it's underway. In fact, we have a department head meeting on it this coming Monday. Yep.
Okay.
And then from there, they'll start interviewing or doing a little bit of the job description Q&A, and then diving into interviews of the staff.
Great. Any other thoughts?
I don't think we had any action items that were open right now that I remember.
Not that I can recall.
Because I know we hit a bunch of them right off the bat
Yeah.
when we got everything going.
I do plan on doing another committee of the whole. I wanted to do it in the first quarter, but since next month is dedicated to budget, so
Let's still the first quarter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're still.
so
Well, I think it would be good for anybody that well, I mean, because there's some of us that are going to be outgoing in April, our last month, so it'd probably be a good idea that we do the committee of the whole to invite newly elected council members to come in and at least,
To be elected.
well,
Possibly be
to be
Yes.
elected. Well, I guess if they're running unopposed, it might be a good idea to just invite anybody on the ballot that is interested in coming in, just so they can observe it, so that there's a level
some
of
continuity.
some
Yeah,
continuity to
true.
it, like we try to do with the budget.
Right.
So that would probably be a good idea. But I think March is the best time to do it if we can stick to it.
The only thing I was just going to add as far as the strategic vision, since I have representatives from the other committees, you notice in the last 6 months or so, we've committed to doing several master plans from parks all the way across. The comp study and the audit and the the IT was all part of this department's or this committee's. We've already got 2 contracts signed, well, 3 contracts signed, and work already starting. It's all part, again, to the strategic vision for all of the committees and the city to have these master plans so that when we go to apply for grants, we actually have the data to support why we're applying.
That's what Donovan said in our meeting last night, was that
Yeah.
almost all grants require a plan. So it's like, yeah, we like your money, but we need a plan as to what you're going to use the money for. So, makes sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't catch if he mentioned it last night. It's a little off topic.
It was kind of
downtown redevelopment.
Yeah, it was when we were talking about the downtown. He just said that there's a downtown master plan that's being worked on for that reason, to allow to apply for all the grants that are there, because if we don't have a plan, they kind of just say no right away.
So who's doing that plan?
Right now, we've got it written into the budget for the committee to talk about.
Oh, okay. So to do that this next budget year?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Correct.
Yeah.
The nice thing is that it all still ties into the future vision here is not just to come up with master plans and go, okay, we've got it, set it aside, is when it comes time to budgeting, as some of the department heads already realized, this budget cycle is, all right, here's what you want, here's what you need, where's this tied to the master plan? So a little preview into February, you'll hear where several of the projects tie into the master plan, the existing ones. Because we've got more coming.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Item number 9, or agenda item 9, new business.
So this is a memo that was unfortunately given to you guys today, and a hard copy was given to you just before this meeting. I just want to emphasize that what we're going to talk about here under new business, I'm not at all looking for any kind of vote. I'm looking for feedback and potentially suggestions. What it is, it ties into the eventual road master plan. This goes back to the 1% that was passed. I know in the infrastructure committee, we talked about this. The question was, do we have actual numbers? And we do. We went back and had the bond council update their projections. And then Gary had a spreadsheet that he had developed that had kind of a synopsis of what it would cost each of these years. So for everybody, including our listeners, and to do the road plan and to maximize the 1% non-home rule sales tax that was passed by referendum in 2023, we want to, or we're suggesting to go for a $4 million 15-year bond and rotate them or stagger them every 5 years. So every 5 years, you're seeing a large spike in revenue in order to be able to get a lot of road project done, be it reconstruction or resurface, curb work included. This will help as far as improving our roads in a very short period of time. I left in here just an idea of what a 5-year plan, because this is one of the questions that popped up, is in year 1 would be a $3.9 million out of that $4 million bond. Year two could be the MFT funds from the first year, or in this case, I'll just use years. The 26 and the 27 MFT dollars, which is $225,000 apiece, combined with another $100,000, $180,000 on average from the non-home rule 1%, would give you $630,000 in year two. And the process kind of continues in year 3, 4, and 5 at about $405,000. I did the math real quick. That's about $5.75 million worth of work done in a 5-year period. And in year 6, the whole process would start over again with another bond. Now, the question is, can we afford it? Yes. We looked at our 1%. We're on pace to hit about $960,000. A nice, safe, conservative view was to say $900,000. The bond dollar amounts or the bond payments were based on the idea that we'd have at least $900,000. So the bonds would be paid heavy in the first year. If you're looking at the chart, the first years of the new bond are heavy, and then they drop off dramatically. By the time they start to drop off, the next bond starts up. If you look in the far right column here, you'll see that based on $900,000 in reserves and getting at least $900,000 every year that these bonds are active, like in year 2 here, or the 2026, you'll see $186,333. That's what's left after the bond, the principal and interest have been paid on that bond. So you're actually ending up with a little bit of money left over every year out of the non-home rule sales tax, assuming we hit the $900,000.
The interest rate on these bonds, is it variable or is it fixed?
Fixed.
Okay.
So like if we were to
That'd
do
be
a
my only
bond
concern.
today,
Yeah, that would be my only concern.
It would
is
be at-
just you tie in for 5 years and then
Right.
there's a
no, it's fixed.
okay.
Put on. The nice thing about it too is the far right column is our pledged revenue, so that's how much we have to keep in our account after our payments are made. However, he based this on correct, Lou? He based this on no change in collection, correct?
Correct.
So this is based on what we collected this past year, which is hopefully going to increase as we move into the term, the future. So all of this is just based on 900. The probability is we're going to have more than that to work with. So in addition to making the bond payments, you're going to start building a reserve where you can do more road work outside of what we've done with the bond in combination with the motor fuel tax funds.
So if this will help out too, and I know Charlie, you like numbers. So if you look on the graph that the spreadsheet Exhibit B, towards the bottom there, with a 3% annual increase. If we were to right now, our normal procedure has been to take the 225 or so MFT dollars and apply it towards road work. I think, and the mayor commented on this. I think the most we've ever spent in a single year that hasn't been funded by a bond or a grant or so on has been about $300,000. It'd be easy to say, well, let's take the $900,000 and apply that towards roads and just do 3 times as much as we've ever done. But, and that works in the first year because we know what the prices are in the first year. When you start getting into year 2, year 3, those costs go up. And with that, you start to lose the value that you could get out of this. By going with a bond, you know what the price is that year. You have that much more money to get more road work done.
And your roads continue to deteriorate over time as well.
Yeah, but the cost of the bond is set. I mean, you're going to pay that.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen inflation-wise and so on. And over time and traditionally, inflation has been less than this. Now it's high right now, but it's been less than this. I'm not buying this right now. I just think that, first of all, you shouldn't be rolling MFT in this because that's a separate deal and we're going to be getting that anyway. So that number isn't 900,000. It's going to be
No,
900 plus.
MFT is not
No.
included in that.
Yeah,
This
but
is
you keep
straight,
bringing it up and including it in
For-
your discussion.
in year 2 on, if you wanted to know how much road work we could get done, the MFT and what's left of the 1% can be combined to get more road work done
Yeah, but what you're really gonna get done is 3.9 on this, on,
in the first year.
in the first year, and 3.8 in the second year.
No.
You're gonna do 3.9 in year one,
Oh, yeah.
and then you will
don't do
have
any.
no revenue, because the rest of the revenue is gonna be dedicated to paying the bond payment.
Except that one little portion.
Yes, except, so you're gonna dedicate 900K each year to pay the bond payment. Anything you bring in above 900, you can utilize to do additional work, and that's where he's saying that money combined with MFT could get you to $300,000 to $400,000 a year of additional work that you can do between each of the successive bonds.
But, okay, so this debt service number, that's what we're being charged for the bond, is that correct?
Interest.
That's interest and bond fees, yes. The 4.8,
Yeah,
yes.
and then in the second year, that's a charge for the, what is it in second year? 2030, I guess, is what I'm looking at here. That would be the next round.
So 2030 would be the next round, and that's when you'd borrow another sum and add it on. If, we would have the option, we wouldn't be locked in. We'd be locked in the first 5 years, and then we could evaluate how the program's growing, how the interest rates and everything, or how the inflationary rates look, and if it made more sense to back out, we could back out at that time. It could be
So-
called and we could be done with it.
Yeah, but, so what we're looking at here, though, is, the cost of the bond being about $1 million a year?
713,000 a year.
For the first couple of years, right?
Right.
And then 2031, it drops down to 123,
Yeah.
right?
But that's because you've
You
got a new
front loaded,
bond,
Right.
and so you've added.
Okay,
now,
yeah.
And so then the, still.
So-
So over the life of the
So in
bond,
order for this to be profitable, if you will, you're gonna have to overcome that 700,000.
well, I think, and I misquoted, the payment a year would be at least 713,000. What you're asking for is over the life of the bond, how
No,
much
per
would you
year.
lose as far as interest?
No, per year, how much will we be paying out of that 1%?
To service the debt.
713, the
713.
full payment amount.
And whatever we collect over 713 is what we can use, what you guys are saying, what we can use within MFTs for the years in between.
Correct.
Beyond
Yeah,
the
get rolled
pledge that
back
we
into
have
the
to
road
maintain.
program.
Yeah, but that's, again, the cost is what I'm talking about here. It's gonna cost us $713,000. And from an inflation standpoint, in other words, for this to pay above just doing it how much money did we get last year? We'll apply that to the roads. We have to overcome the $713,000. In other words, inflation would have to be higher than that for this to make sense, to me.
Well, that goes back to Gary's worksheet, correct?
So when you go back to Gary's spreadsheet, I listed the bond column, row, and then the normal if we did it, every year. And the difference between the two, I believe I wrote in my memo, is about $422,000. So if we did yearly, the $900,000 a year, just dedicated every year we go out, the difference between the two is that we would actually spend $422,000 more dollars to accomplish the same amount of work than we could with the bond. If we did it yearly, yes. Versus the bond doing it, having that one lump sum right away, and then 5 years later doing it again.
Couple of things about this that, the way I'm seeing this, again, just perspective, but it's low risk because the interest rate is fixed. So once we pick this bond, the interest rates could triple and it won't matter. We're still paying the interest rates the same. So it doesn't cost us more to borrow the money. Yes, we are bringing in quite a bit more money through the MFT and the 1% than we were 5 years ago, but we've also seen the costs for this work go up significantly. We've in-housed some of it, but my thing is that I think it's wiser to front load some of this money into a larger batch, because we've seen where some of these roads we're going to resurface, and there's no base. We're below the base at that point. We're practically down to the Roman road underneath. So we're going to get to a point where the $900,000 that we're doing every year isn't going to meet the standard for some of these roads that need basically to be replaced, not resurfaced. And when we have to do that, we're going to be doing a block versus 10 blocks of work, because we're going to have years where we literally can't do anything because we're replacing one tiny section of road. And then in that year, we're going to see more, we're going to fall back behind because we can't get ahead. So that's where I'm kind of seeing that, and it's only for the 5 years. So if we do the program and we get to the end of the 5 years and financially the numbers don't make sense to do another 5 years, we're not tied into this for decades. We're doing it the one time, and maybe it gets us ahead for a few years and we get some of these really, really horrible roads fixed. And then
Still tied into it for 15.
The first bond.
the first bond, yeah. Yeah, the first
So even,
bond.
and I guess for Charlie's sake, because like I said, infrastructure, I understand, I'm looking at the bond more, and I actually think it's the best way. But especially the first one, because in 2031, who knows what the interest rate, the treasury yield is going to be way more. And if it is, then it might not be worth it. But then unfortunately, then we're not going to get another big bond to help with that, to do that year 6 project, because we're still paying off the 15-year bond. And we have to try and use some of that money to do what we are doing as well. So I guess that's the only concern, is if it does fail after the first bond, is then that 900,000 every year is paying off bonds instead of actually going to the full work going to roads again. Because we're saying, hey, we're not gonna 713, I mean, and then 123, but we're still using a portion of it.
Yep.
Unless we go again for the, in year 6, but who knows what it is, so.
Well, that means we got to be
Yeah.
extremely.
And whoever's here at year 6 has
Yeah.
to realize what.
So we need to be
Exactly.
extremely aggressive in that first round of repairs, taking that big bumper and getting the absolute worst areas that we can possibly get done and get it lifted back up to a point where there's more maintenance and rejuvenation than replacement.
Well, that's
So-
the
Well,
other.
I wanted to just correct something for you, Matt. Remember, these bonds are front-loaded.
Yeah, no,
So-
that's why I mentioned it then. I know Deb was about ready to say something, then I corrected myself and I saw she kind of understood.
No,
So in
it's
the,
okay.
in the first 5 years, if you only do the first bond, okay? In the first 5 years, yeah, your debt service is 713,000, but then in year 6, because you front-loaded it, it drops all the way down to 123.
No, I get that, and I understand that. I'm just saying, if by year 5, like say the bonds are way out of control, something happens where, the interest rates for bonds go way up high, and it's not worth it because we're going to be paying even more to them, and we're not getting as much inflation on our sales tax, like the businesses say that, we're still going to be using 123,000 of that sales tax, say if it stays at 900,000, we're getting it every year, to pay that off, so we're actually using less again for that 1% sales tax. That's the only concerning I can see people with that, if it goes haywire.
If we stopped,
Yes.
Yeah.
right, because we'd still have to come up with the interest for the remainder of the initial.
Right.
But in
The
the
initial bond.
in the situation of borrowing money to get ahead, this is about as low risk as it gets.
Yeah. No, I mean,
And my other concern is when we're talking about inflation and getting ahead of things is, again, we're talking maybes, but should a lot of these tariffs that are being discussed go into effect, the vast majority of the materials that are being used for construction do not come from domestic sources. And the ones that don't are going to affect gross construction projects across the board. I mean, concrete, timber, whatever. So if we can get ahead and get this work done now, by doing this, we can potentially at least insulate ourselves from exorbitantly high costs that we might see 2-3 years down the road.
Now, so
We're
a
playing maybes,
question,
but this
Right.
this is risk management is what this is.
but a question that I have, or something before I would feel comfortable supporting something like this, I'd want to see the road, the plan for road repair and replacement.
When's that
What-
supposed to be done?
Well, we talked about that in the infrastructure meeting.
Yeah.
And at this point, we're just talking about this. We did
Right.
pass something in that committee, though, that will get the thing started. And, in other words, the Air Street thing for the first year, we're gonna recommend to the city council that be done. And then, hold off on this part and finance that with money that we have set aside.
Yeah.
That's all laid out. And then, we can hold off on this for a while and keep discussing it and so on, and while he's working on that plan to finalize it.
Because what is going through my mind is like, okay, so $4 million in, year one that this starts. And so that's going to be, I mean, that's still not a lot, given our deficit in Harvard.
Exactly, because let's go back a ways, and the thing of it is that we know that the 1% was never going to cover the
Right.
roads as we needed to get them done.
Right.
We knew that.
Right.
The graph was still upside down, and it
Yes.
was still going to deteriorate faster than we could repair.
Right.
So we knew that. So, and we've also known, and we've had discussions about it, is what do we do about that?
Right.
How do we get more money and so on? And one of the possibilities was a bond, but
Yeah.
not this bond, but a referendum type bond, to fix roads. And if the people really want them fixed, here's how we can do it, and here's where we can get money.
Right.
I'm not sure how that would work with this. In other words, once you've committed to a bond
Yeah.
of this,
Yeah.
this is the limit. This is the best you're going to do. I think. I think, to then go for more money somehow would be almost impossible to do. But if we just use the money as we get it for this part, then we open ourselves up for more possibilities and other kind of bonds. Once they see that hey, this is a positive move, we are moving in the right direction, and maybe we can make this grow even more,
Right.
and maybe we're willing to pay more money to do it.
Yeah.
I just think that because I think if we go with this and we go with this bond, we're locked.
There's trade-offs for everything.
Yeah.
That's what it
Right.
comes down to. It's
Yeah.
trade-offs. So the question is, what do you prioritize? Do you prioritize maximizing every dollar that you get? Obviously, that's something we would like to do. The trade-off to that, by doing it pay-as-you-go, is you make people wait longer. If you decide to go for the bond, so you're basically taking a revenue stream and taking that revenue stream to be able to do a lot of stuff at once very quickly. I think my personal opinion is the community would actually be in favor of that because more roads would get done faster. The one piece, and I'm not sure that's spelled out here, but you do get more economies of scale by the larger the project that you
Yeah.
do. So you can stretch your money further by doing 3.9 million than you can by doing
Yeah,
1 million
absolutely.
at a time. So that, there is some trade-off for the interest that you're gonna pay for the bond, but you recoup some of that in the ability to increase the quantity that you can do because of economies of scale. Where that tipping point is, I'm not exactly sure. The other piece of that is, as you do pay-as-you-go, as has already been stated, we know that it's almost a guarantee, there is going to be some inflationary cost each year. So by year 5 or 6, it could be 3% a year, it could be 2%, it could be 5%. But if you took an average of 3% a year, which isn't outrageous, it's going to be 15% more in year 5 than it is in year 1. And you could build a lot more in year 1 by bonding out against that revenue stream in today's dollars, not 5 years from now dollars. So it's a trade-off. Do you want to trade off some of that revenue stream to pay a bond for the interest, to be able to do a whole lot right now, and maybe the tipping point's a lot closer than we think because of economies of scale, And the unknown piece is how much more inflationary cost would there be if we did it pay-as-you-go?
Right.
Those are the decisions that you guys have to weigh out. Staff is simply saying, hey, with all things considered, we believe that bonding out allows us to do more very quickly, which is the community already knows, this is coming and they want to get as much done as fast as possible. So it meets that criteria. It allows us to get much more economy of scale than we would if we go pay-as-you-go, even though we will get more economy of scale than we did previously when we only did about 300,000 a year, so
Right.
it's 3 times more. But if we did 3.9 all at once, you're a dozen times more than what we would have done, much faster. I know that, that's up for the
Well,
council to decide what's the best
Right.
trade-off for the community.
But the question for me is, okay, just looking at the chart from Bernardi, it looks less appealing in the third and fourth iterations than it does in the first
Sure.
time.
Of course.
Because you're then paying multiples and you're not paying it off as fast. And so you end up, your overall amount that you're paying to borrow that money ends up being a lot more. Like you end up, if you're getting the bond for 3.8 and then you end up paying 5.6 is what, almost $2 million is what you end up paying for that work, which I'm not excited about that. But my bigger question is, I would want to see what's the plan for what is the priority, because, just to be completely honest, transparent, or open, and I apologize that I have a standing committee meeting on the second Monday of every month, so I'm not able to attend the infrastructure meeting, and that I haven't been able, because of work meetings, to watch the meeting. But just knowing that it's going to come to council for the first year of our 1% funds are going to be used for Air Street. And if I don't know all of I've read the materials for the committee. I haven't seen the discussion, but that's a big chunk of money for one road that, granted it's, our downtown, but that it's a more of a emotional decision to do that than a technical one.
It is and it isn't, because it was stated last night that the road is at a point now where spending the money to do it is the prevention versus waiting longer, and now it becomes a complete rebuild, and now you're going to spend 3 times the amount to do it. So it, again, it's trade-offs. It's trade-offs with anything.
You remember a couple meetings back, or when we had the water break over on Air Street, and Rob was talking about fixing that?
Yeah.
And one of the things he brought up was that you could reach down and pull some of the asphalt off, and you were looking at the brick from 1850 underneath.
Yeah.
Because it was so deteriorated. That's where we get with some of this, is that yes, you're going to have section. The problem is we spent all that money and time to do all of these condition reports on the roads throughout town. So we had a grading system of how bad things are at. We know that, and I'm just making up the numbers just to make it simple, but if a road is 5 and 5 is the worst, every square foot of that road is going to cost 10 times to fix what a road 2 is going to cost. So the worse the roads are, the more money we're going to have to spend to do less road. So the way I'm looking at this is, I agree, I think, that, again, I'm probably not gonna be voting on this because of how long it's gonna take, but my opinion is that I think that putting together a road program with the three, at least a preliminary one to review, that puts that 3.9 million into a feasible program that says, this is what we want to spend the money on. Here's why, because this road, and this road are so bad that we can actually see the horse hitches sticking out from underneath it. We need to replace them, and once those are replaced, we can then utilize more money doing rejuvenation in other areas that aren't as bad.
Are
in
those
those
sticking
four-
out? Because those probably cost a lot of money.
Probably. But we've legit got areas that are so bad
Yeah.
that we can't repave them.
So can
And-
I kind of bring this back in? So I think what Lisa's trying to ask Lou is before we make a decision on this from the admin side, will the one from our Monday meeting with infrastructure with Gary, will we get that master plan? Will that get in before we have to make this decision?
So, if you recall from Monday's meeting, the master plan should be done before any final decision. In fact, right now, the projected latest to make a decision on the bond would be January 2026.
Okay.
This discussion, just like trying to get the master plan, and would change. There's going to be some concerns, there's going to be risks. We're starting this discussion a year ahead of time to make sure not only that the committee and the council feel good about whatever decision, be it yea or nay, but that the public also sees what's going on. There's 12 months to educate everybody on whatever the decision is going to be.
Can you remind me, the paver study, what they recommended to get us to good
8 million.
a year?
A year.
8
A
million a
That's to
year.
That's to get us all the way up. It was,
Yes,
to stay even, I think it was 5.
to stay where
I
we're
think you're
at
right. I think
today,
you're right.
to not deteriorate any further, we needed 5 million a year.
Yeah,
To-
to
to ma-
to keep them at 36 or
To
38
maintain
or
status quo, 5 million a year.
That's a huge bond, if we
So
were gonna
this
try to
is-
do that.
Yeah,
And I'll be honest, I mean, I applaud your faith in people, Charlie, that should we utilize that 900,000 each year and show them returns on their roads, that in theory, we should be able to go back to them and say, look at all the good work we've done. Can we get a bond from you to get ahead? But the problem is that going with what Mike said and what I've seen since I've lived here is people want, they want, when we make a decision and they say, okay, the city spent that money, and we know that now it's going to take us a year or two to actually get that project in place. By the time we get the project done, all they've done is complain that it wasn't done weeks after it was approved, because they want the instant gratification. And if we spend, and I'm just saying that if we spend the 900,000 out every year, we already have admitted, we know we're going to get diminishing returns on that every single year going forward, because we're only going to barely be able to keep up. It was moving heaven and earth to get people to agree to give us the 1% more. And if we're showing them diminishing returns and then asking them to give us another 1% or another bond, they're just going to, the viewpoint I can tell you right now is going to be, you're not utilizing the money well enough. Use what we give you.
well, but Dan, don't
We know the
kid
reality.
yourself though, because they're gonna see a lot of stuff gets done 1 year, and then they're not gonna see anything for 5 years.
It won't be nothing. It'll be a lot of rejuvenation and
Right,
in-house
which
repair. It'll be
They're
closer
not
to what
gonna
we're-
see,
It'll be closer to what we've been doing now.
right, exactly, but so to them, it's not gonna look like anything. The roads that are really bad aren't going to be getting fixed, they'll get fixed in 5 years. So, it's,
The biggest difference you're going to see, and the mayor said it, I tried to explain it in my memo, is that with $3.9 million of road work done, you're going to have a lot more to point to say, look what we've got done, than if you just throw $300,000 or $900,000. And the one thing I did want to mention too, and I mentioned this at the infrastructure meeting, when I talked to the mayor earlier today, to get anything done, it's a three-pronged attack to get the roads done. It's not just funding it. or coming up with a master plan. It's following it up with maintenance. So one of the reasons why our roads are failing, at least what I've come to know since being here, is that we threw money at the road, just cut it and throw a new surface on it, and then forget it, and when it needs to be replaced, we'll just replace it. That's just throwing the money away. Okay? That didn't address any of the curb work, didn't take care of any of the substructure. You were just hoping that it would hold on, and it didn't. 3 years later, that same asphalt was already falling apart. We changed our direction to go with maintenance, to try to at least salvage what we have to buy us time for the 1% to come in for plans to be made. We've started on Monday night with the first phase, or we've made a recommendation that's going to go to the council for the first phase. The next phase is finish with getting the master plan and eventually to fund all of this. When this is done, if you go this three-prong attack, the citizens are going to be far happier than they have. They've been happy right now with just the skip patching that we've been
Skip
doing.
patching's been
Okay.
huge. yes.
Now imagine if you're going to be able to do 13 years worth of work in one shot versus waiting 13 years to see
13
that.
years.
You've been averaging
Relative to
300.
what we were doing previously
Correct.
before the.
Correct.
So at a 300K, which is what we were doing prior to the 1%, you're essentially going to do about 13 years worth of work in 1 year if you bought
Yeah, but
it.
everybody keeps forgetting, you're going to push like 3 years worth into a push in 2026. Then you're not going to do anything big time, just skip patching and stuff
Yeah.
for 3 more
Well,
years.
and you're going to do more expensive work.
No,
Yeah, except we're going to do that 1 year. We're going to do more expensive work than we've been doing.
That's what I'm
So
getting
there's
at
not
is
going to be as many
Well,
road miles that are going to be done
we stick with the 900,000.
if we're
okay?
going to be rebuilding
still-
roads.
We're still better with, I agree with you, Charlie, we're still better off with the 900,000 than we were without it. I'm not denying that. But what I'm getting at is that there's no getting around it. The 900,000 is going to be diminishing returns. We're going to get less and less for that money. And we're going to see a year, whether we do this or not, I can tell you right now, within 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a year where we have to spend every dime on a couple of blocks and then see no repair for 3 or 4 years until we get, because we're going to, but think about it, Charlie, we're going to have areas that have dilapidated so bad. I mean, like Ayer Street, where the base of the road is gone, and we're going to have to sink more and more, and we're going to get less and less footage out of it because we'll have to use so much of it for that
That's
year.
what Gary's working on, and I'm not going to argue with you on it. I'm just going to wait for that to come in and
Well, I think that's probably prudent because
Yeah.
until you have a plan in front of you, it's really difficult to make any decisions. But it's not bad to discuss the strategies that you can employ.
yeah, but we know.
I don't have a hat in the argument.
We know.
I know Third and Blaine ain't going to get paved anytime soon on any road program because of where we're at. And I also am not going to
Stayed
be
on,
voting
you
on it.
could have
Well,
influenced us.
I can, okay, I tell you, it would only look really, really, really bad if I did that. Okay, but
Oh, but Dan, you wouldn't be the first to have done that.
I know there's trees that run down certain streets that are beautiful for certain reasons, but
Really?
we won't get into it, but I'm aware my street. Every person that's on the northern end of my little bit of street complains about the end of their driveway crumbling. Even if we did this 3.9 million, I know for a fact that they're not going to have the end of their driveway not crumbling because that's probably going to be the lowest item on the totem pole that gets discussed because it's going to be so expensive to do a little bit. I get it. I know that. But I just look at this and it brings me back to when we first started the sidewalk program as an example. Okay. When we talked about doing the sidewalk program, we hadn't put any, I just came on city council. I don't think we'd put any money into sidewalks ever. Other than the program to try to get the developers to do it, which they kind of did.
No, it was a 50-50 program.
Oh,
Well, and then we
Right.
ended up with houses that had sidewalk and then no sidewalk and then sidewalk and no sidewalk. So we put the money aside, and we put a good chunk aside and said, we can't do this a little. We have to do this a lot to get it started so that people see this and they've got it in their mind. Look at all we did in one go. And if you're willing to let us continue to do this, we can do this. And it stands the test of time. When you resurface a road, that road's good for 4 or 5 years. Okay. And certain roads in town, it's maybe 2. I mean, you could resurface 5th Street and that thing will look like it bombed out after 2 years.
Yeah.
But when we rebuild a road, you're getting 10, 15, 20 years out of it probably if it's maintained.
If you do the three-prong attack I'm talking about and making sure you're doing the maintenance, that's the other key part, is you've got to do the maintenance. Then what you should get out of your road, so good substructure on, you should be able to get at least 20 years, preferably 25, out of each road. But right now you're getting 3.
That's what I mean. Like we're literally.
And you're not
just
even addressing the substructure. You're
We're going to be
just throwing
replacing the
asphalt.
same roads over and over and over, and just keep spending the same amount of money to replace the same roads. Because, sorry, but every time we do one of these assessments on the roads, part of it part of the rating goes towards use and necessity, and then the rest of it's going to go to crumbling road. If you're on a dead end street that's a block and a half long, and they've got to go and spend, $200,000 just to set the machine up and do your little strip, and there's nothing left of that road, but nobody uses it, it's never going to go high enough on that list to get. So we're just going to keep redoing the same roads over and over again and spending more and more money to do the same roads over and over.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I would just like to say that I'm looking forward to seeing the master plan and an accompanying budget that shows us where the priorities are, and for the, whatever it is, 3.9 million as an example, what can be done for that? Because it's going to cost per road mile or road block, whatever. The type of work that we need to do is going to cost a lot more than the work that we've ever done. And so there's not going to be, it's not like, oh, look, we're going to get 10 times more blocks done. We're just going to do better. So, but I want to see the plan and how that all, and that's going to be sometime later this year?
Correct. And the plan is being designed on a 70-30 breakup, at least 70%, because we know the roads, quite a few of the roads don't even have a decent substructure. That at least 70% would be assuming that we have to build from the ground up, curb to curb, and 30% allocated towards resurfacing, the ones where we know the substructure is good. And so there too is another 2-prong attack to try to get as much road work as done. And you are correct. It's going to cost more to open up a road and get it completely done. So that's why we keep talking dollars and not miles. And just as an example, and again, this is more for anybody listening or future listening, Eastman alone. We originally, if I remember right, thought the project would cost about $100,000 or so just to do curb work and adjust the sidewalks. It costs somewhere around $1 million, $1.5 million, because we found out after doing a couple of core samples, there's nothing underneath that road. So any repair work is just lost money. So it is always key. You can't just build a house without a foundation. You can't build a road without a good substructure. Otherwise, you're just throwing money away. It doesn't matter if you got a bond for 3.9. If you don't address the substructure, you're right back to just throwing $300,000 a year and hoping. Well, the citizens voted for 1%, to allocate 1% in the sales tax dollars for a plan and for the roads to get done. And what I'm offering here is a plan to get the roads done for the next umpteen years. So again, that's why it's 12 months before a final decision needs to be made. There's a lot of information. I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback from our listeners out there. But that's why I wanted to start this discussion, because it goes hand in hand with eventual master plan. It's going to be a foot race on which one has to come first in the end.
be honest, I'm excited to see what the master plan looks
Yeah.
like and see how far the money can go. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd love to see a compare, I mean, even if I'm not on this council by then, I'd love to see a comparison. And this would be what I would say to look at is run a comparison and say, what can we do with the 3.9? And what would the 900 get us? And have a side-by-side comparison and say,
Exactly.
what
Yeah,
are-
where can we get at
because
the
then-
end
then-
of,
Because then the public can see what the decision is.
agreed. Okay, thank you, Lou, for all of that information. I appreciate it. I did have one other thing that I would like to just mention under new business, and that is, I know Matt and I had talked, and I had brought this up to Mike and Lou about the reports from the police department that we used to get, that the council used to get until a couple of years ago, I guess, of like a press release of significant activity, not like wellness checks and things like that, but criminal stuff. And now we get nothing. And I had asked the question if there was something maybe somewhere even between what we used to get and nothing that we could be getting instead. And I'm bringing that up because I'm personally, it's as a resident, I feel like I get more information from the McHenry Lake County Scanner on Facebook than I do from our own city. And that's.
The Ring, if you have a Ring app.
I don't.
The neighbors thing,
Yeah, I
post
don't.
things on that.
Yeah, maybe I need to get
Sometimes it might be
that.
another state over for some reason. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, on what the original, when Chief Kraus was putting those out all the time, they were entertaining to read. I feel like they felt that at least the day-to-day ones that didn't have any, that was more the monotonous stuff, fed more into local gossip chains than anything else because of the names that would pop up or somebody said, oh, the so-and-so got hit for a DUI, or something like that. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't see the necessitation of it. I do agree that I think that if there's a major event, we absolutely should, or there's a concern or something that happens at a school or anything like that, which I think that they've done a good job of
But it's
reporting
like
to us.
if there's a gun involved. I mean, it's
Well,
the
that's what I
things
mean.
that we hear about it's pretty major.
Depending on what it is, I mean, in most cases, if there's any kind of public risk, there's been a report that we've gotten. And usually we'll get it in our email prior to it actually being published or almost simultaneously, but we usually will see it a little bit before in case there's questions.
Oh, or not. I mean,
But if there's
Yeah.
ever if there's a public
McHenry Lake County Scanner is usually,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying like in cases where where there was at some point a risk to the public, we're documenting those. Now, a bad car accident out on a side road that killed somebody, it's as tragic as that is, or if it was a drunk driver, there's no general risk to the public.
Right.
And I can understand where some of that stuff they don't want to put out right away because there's usually, emergency responders and investigations going on, and they don't want to feed into anything until they know the whole situation.
I don't think that's what Lisa's trying to say, because that's not criminal activity 100% unless you got the DUI, but I don't think that's the reason why, and that's not.
I mean, I'm not aware of
I think
any.
it's more of the other stuff that we got. There's, I guess, and like Lisa was saying, I guess there could be some things in there, and I would have to pull it back because I don't delete my city emails. I like to keep my emails going forever. I would have to pull.
First off, you shouldn't delete your city emails, please. That's
Yeah, I
document
know.
retention.
And that's what I'm saying, so I don't. But, I would have to go back, but I guess there could be some that we could say, hey, no, this doesn't need to be on. But there is stuff there that, hey, that, and Lisa mentioned this at city council, either December one, I think it was. About November. About, either other towns are putting out more on their press release that their own citizens can see than
Well, yeah,
we have.
like the Independent has all of Woodstock's. I mean,
Well, I mean,
every week.
are you talking
That's
like,
because the Woodstock Independent submits a FOIA request to the police department for
Right.
the register.
Yeah, and we don't have our we don't have our newspaper anymore.
Right.
But I guess it's more like, and then Kraus used to put it out there with that to kind of like be transparent to the public. Hey, this is what our police department's doing. This is what we're doing, catching these bad guys and stuff like that. And I think it's more also showing our public, hey, yes, there's bad people in town. Every town has them. But hey, our police department is doing their job. Instead of the jokes with Dunkin' Donuts, oh, they're going to be the first ones there at Dunkin' Donuts when they open up, stuff like that.
that's never going to go away.
I know, that's
been
never going to go away.
since I was a kid.
So my question to you is, what do you want to see?
If it doesn't involve, for me, if it doesn't involve a risk to the public in any way, shape, or form, then I see it as kind of a redundant exercise, because it's still going to take time for someone to actually sit and draft that, and then they have to publish it.
That's actually probably cut and paste nowadays with the police reporting
Right.
system.
Right. And it, for some reason, wasn't a problem for Tyson to do that when Mark was the chief.
We currently issue police reports for major crimes. If you want something more than that, I need to understand what more do you want? Do you want when there's a burglary? That's not a major crime. Do you want when there is a...
Wellness check?
No.
I just need
Chicken
to,
at
I
large?
just need to know what level you're seeking beyond major crimes.
We get, the police get called out for, and that's why they're trained, I mean, this as first responder. They get called out for all sorts of things, between wellness checks, a disagreement between somebody who thinks they're talking to somebody.
Which I don't
I mean-
think, no, sorry to interrupt, Lou.
Sure.
We weren't getting those types, I don't think, in
No,
our
no,
press
we
release
weren't.
at all.
And-
We were getting every retail theft.
But that's
No,
still crime. and
yeah.
it
Well,
was
I
only
know, but I'm
one.
just saying, like, I don't
Yeah,
care
that's
if,
a-
I don't,
that's a
honestly don't care if
theft.
somebody stole a
Yeah.
can of peas from Walmart and got busted for it, and they want to report it.
Maybe somebody else does.
Yeah, or maybe, maybe if they walked out with a cart full of electronics, which was often,
Could we go
what it
back and look at
was.
what
Yeah.
Chief Kraus used to do and kind of go from there?
Thank you.
because it's just going from,
Mrs. Kravitz lives about a block from me.
should I check with her?
Yeah, check with her.
I mean, in all honesty, if somebody really, really wants to know all the nitty gritty and dirt on all of their neighbors, they can just submit a FOIA request.
But we always talk about transparency. And
Yeah.
I know FOIA request is another step that they have to,
Well, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate just because we have to consider the people that are also being reported in here too.
but
Okay,
it's a public information, unfortunately.
it is public information, but there's a difference between being public information and us broadcasting someone's dirty laundry for everybody to read. Because
What?
again,
But we're not broadcasting it.
really?
That's
How-
not.
It was
are-
published on social media, if you don't remember. These were published on Facebook when they came out. If someone got pulled over for a DUI, it was published on Facebook. And I know of several names that I'm familiar of that had them, and it made their life very difficult in town, even though that had nothing to do with their interactions with other people. But it made their life very difficult with other people because
DUIs are in the paper.
Yeah,
they are in the paper. But what I'm saying is there's a difference between people going in and looking at it and it being broadcast to social media. Because in the newspaper, you also don't have people writing in the newspaper comments or going into their pages and going after them personally because the tool is right there to do it.
Well, I'm not going to go down social media thing because
Right.
that's way too far down, and unfortunately that does happen. So,
I'm just
again,
saying,
so the-
playing devil's advocate, I think that
No,
we
I-
also need to be respectful of people's privacy because there is a certain level that just because somebody does something doesn't mean that if it's public information that it should be
Oh.
made that much easier for everyone to be notified of.
I understand, but I just don't want to get too much. Unfortunately, if that's actually harassment, so they could actually go against those people on social media harassing them as well. And that's another big
And we're not
discussion, but that's
asking,
not part
I'm
of our
not
reason why we're here.
suggesting, yeah, that we post this on social media, on the police social media page.
And that's why we're asking for a little understanding because, again, if I can recall the last two reports I looked at, most of them were a teen was upset because boyfriend dumped her. And so she was calling to see what the police could do about it. There was one that was, there was at least 2 wellness checks. There was one that the gentleman thought they heard someone break into their house. It turns out nothing. I mean, you got to help us out because this is what we see as far as the reports. What is it that you're wanting?
Well, the purpose of
Where's
these
the
is,
cutoff?
the whole purpose of this was to notify the public.
Yeah.
So if we're not posting it on social media, and we're not if we're not publishing it on social media,
I'd
if we're
say
not
like
publishing
what
it,
Deb
then-
was asking, mentioned and bringing up, to go look back at what Tyson and Mark had.
How about we post anytime there's an arrest? Is that sufficient?
I thought that's what we were getting, but from what,
Yeah.
at least what I was reading,
I don't know.
Well, an arrest would include a DUI.
Yeah.
An arrest would include.
A battery
but
victim,
a DUI is not considered a major
assault. I
crime.
know
Yeah.
those assault ones.
Battery, assault,
That's
Rape.
arrest.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
gunshot wounds, those kind of things, we
An
do
arrest.
issue the press release. The question is, where do you want the
No,
fresh?
I
I
think
think
that's
it
a
should-
good way to put it,
I
is
think-
if there's an
But those-
arrest,
but
because if
the-
it's just responding to shoplifting at Walmart, and there isn't any arrest, because the person's gone, I mean, that happens every day, I think. But
Not
if,
every day, but
yeah,
certainly every week,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah,
But then,
So-
well, if someone, so, then we're getting too far along on this, and,
yeah.
but
That's why I'm just seeking direction.
That's why
If you set it at, arrests, that's an easy line of demarcation.
because we could also get one where, and I don't think it's happened in a while, but we do have dealerships in town. Someone could steal a car and not get arrested at that day, but that should be sent out, press release.
Yeah, if a car was stolen.
But
yeah.
that would be a major incident.
And that's notified, that does go out on social media, and that is published. We had a car theft that was like 2 doors down from me, and they totaled the car off, I think it was Lawrence Road. And that was reported almost immediately because they hadn't, and they said,
And
we haven't caught
red,
the people
on
that did it."
code red?
No, that was published by the Harvard Police Department. They came to my door because they actually they came to me and my father-in-law's door to ask if
I
we'd
don't
seen
think they
it.
had that published, because I think I know when you're talking about, the only reason why I know is because what department I'm on.
Well, it was, they published it because it came out almost immediately on social
So-
media that they reported, and the reason, and I know that because they said they didn't actually have the people in custody, and they were notifying because they wanted to know if anybody had seen anything to contact the police department because
So-
they nailed our.
If I can jump in, so to help everybody out, what we'll do is we'll look back at Kraus's old reports, compare them against the reports that we've been doing. We'll kind of at least use generally an arrest or something similar as a guideline if there's just not enough information. And then we'll present something next and
Okay.
tell me yay or
Thank
nay.
you.
Thank you, because, I mean, it went from maybe too much to nothing. I mean, yeah, so thank you very much. Any other new business? No?
I just have one thing quick.
Yes.
I don't know, go ask Lori. Thank you, Lori. Chapter 2D2 states that the treasurer shall pay out money only on vouchers, checks, or orders properly signed by the mayor, city clerk, and city treasurer. That's why the city clerk signs checks.
Okay, but it says preferably.
No,
No,
it says properly signed.
Okay, so that is in the
So it is in
ordinance.
the ordinance.
Okay,
Again, thank you, Lori.
yes.
So you gotta use your big girl signature, you can't use your scribble.
Correct, properly.
It must be
Yep.
proper, yes.
I guess I have one thing, and
Yeah.
and this actually, I guess, goes with the comp study that's being started. I was wondering at least for like admin committee or city council, if we could get, I guess, the contracts, and comp of department heads. So we know, because we actually never know.
The only person that has a contract is me. And
But-
that one you were well aware of. But I mean, just to state that, no department head has a contract.
I don't think we ever got a contract.
We've never seen your contract.
Yeah.
You should have, because you approved it back in November of 2022.
Yeah.
We approved hiring you.
Yeah.
We didn't approve a contract.
Yeah, but
Pretty
we don't,
sure.
we don't
Wasn't here,
approve we don't approve the contract.
Right.
We approve, what we do is we approve,
I know,
we
but it'd still be
approve
nice
Mike being able to
to
enter
see
it.
that stuff as on here.
Well, yeah, we can request
Yeah.
it, but I mean, as a statute, we don't,
I'm
we're not
not saying about that. That's why I'm not going in the
Yeah.
big thing. I just in general for everyone.
yeah, no, I mean,
And my
I'm just saying
contract's
that's why
public
we wouldn't have seen
information,
it, is
so.
because it's not a statute that we do, we can request it, but when we vote to say Mike can enter in a contract, and he goes, okay, and then he
Yeah.
does, so.
So I'm just
That's good. That's good to know, though. So our other department heads, they're hired. They're not. There's no contract.
There's given a starting salary, and then they're at the whatever percentage increase based on evaluations and and protocol.
I mean,
And-
are we able to, I know we see that at the workshop technically, but are we able to kind of see how that gets to that salary base? Because we were just kind of
Yeah.
told at the workshop, hey, this is what we're recommending, but we actually don't know always. Not, not always why.
That's kind of what
the
the
department head makes.
Yeah.
It's public. It's published on the city website what their salary and compensation is.
But I'm talking about workshop going up with the increase and everything. Not
Well,
always.
I think the workshop shows you what the current salary is and what the recommended increase is.
I understand
So,
that,
and the
Mayor.
whole
I'm
point of
saying
having-
that
and the
the
whole
reason
point
how
of-
we get to that point.
The whole point we're doing the compensation study is because we don't know from the past how the base salaries or the salaries were set, and they have just been continually increasing over time.
Well, we used to.
So that's the point of doing a study, is to see, is what we're paying today less or more than peer groups, so you can make decisions in
Well,
the
and-
future on what we need to do.
And aren't a lot of these folks in a union, covered by union?
Not the department heads.
Not the department
No,
heads.
but
Okay,
we-
not the department heads.
Department heads are salaried exempt.
But we used to, the percentage that we increased, we usually kept it comparable to what the union
Right.
increases were,
Yes.
so that because we tried to keep it fair, so that it made sense, and it was easier to budget, because we weren't going from like 10% for this person, 25% for this person, and then 6% for the union.
Right.
It was just easier to do it
Yeah.
in one go.
Wouldn't
So-
any significant increase requests be done through closed session and then later approved?
anything over $10,000 has to be approved by the council. Anything under $10,000 is generally not, or at least that's been the past practice.
And we've done that twice.
So the other thing is, one, I think what you're asking, if I can guess here, is evals, which are not
No,
public
not
information.
those. I know those aren't, because
Job descriptions.
Yeah, job descriptions, yeah, thank you. That-
So with that is the comp study, because some of our job descriptions are simply like 4 or 5 lines. I mean, sorry, things haven't been updated in decades.
Kind of like Gomer Pyle or something like that, where it's like, what do? I work, I show up, and I do stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Not
actually,
quite that bad, but
No, but I know it's like. I
part
know
of the compensation
We're
study
unfortunately dealing with
will
that.
help us rewrite
They're just out of date.
job
They're just-
descriptions for
they're
the
out of
jobs
date.
that we have.
there's
This isn't just department heads, though. The compensation study.
Right, well,
Okay.
okay, and there's a reason for that. I'm
Right.
sorry to cut you
Yeah.
off, but the reason being is that we've done like spot checks to see where we are. This will tell us comparable cities, comparable department sizes, and comparable populations, so that we have a baseline to go with. Because right now, as you mentioned, we've just been doing whatever the union does. And unfortunately, that's getting to the point it's unsustainable. So this next round of negotiations, we want to try to make sure that there is some separation. The other part, as an example, as far as job descriptions and kind of how things were, you have a finance director that still does not have a job description.
Well, and we have a finance director that became a finance director because her position that she was doing was way more than what her title was, and we made
So,
her finance director.
this is-
So,
this
it's
is
a
why-
good, a good exercise of why we need to do this.
Right. This is why I asked this committee and eventually the council to commit to this so that we have a good, solid baseline. We know a sergeant at a comparable department makes this much money. Are we high? Are we low? Same as, and it is not just salaries, it's also benefits across the board. So we know, are we doing 80-20 and everybody else is doing 60-40 when it comes to insurance benefits? We need to know these things. Right now, it's just kind of spot check, and usually it's when somebody else is posting the job. We got to get away from that. And same with the cost of living increases. Right now, we've been using the union rate. What I want to get us shifted over to where it's a cost of living increase and or a merit base. So there's a percentage in there. So, because right now, what we've had, or at least what I've seen, is we've had some staff members that were getting wages increases with doing virtually nothing. And then we've got others that are busting their butt, that are getting the same pay increase. That's a morale killer right there. So this is why, again, we need a solid baseline, why we're doing a wage comp study. We're going to get that by about April. In there, they're going to make suggestions as far as job descriptions. And the other thing, too, is going back to it, and I'm sorry if I sound like I'm on a soapbox, because I originally thought we were going to be out at least by 8-ish. So I had to make a ditto mark here. The other part to it is we need to make sure that our staff understand what their job descriptions are. We may be asking them to do more than what their job descriptions say. Likewise, they may not even understand what their job descriptions are. So we're going from the Wild West into more a civilized way of doing things. Sorry to be that descriptive, but
No, I would say just to kind of
and it takes time.
to book on that. The other side of it is that if you don't have a solid job description, you don't have these details laid out. It also makes it very difficult from an accountability standpoint to hold people accountable because you don't have a standard to hold them up against. So you can't say, well, you're not doing your job. And they're like, well, it's not in my job description that I have to do it. So really, what can you hold people accountable to? Because there's nothing on paper that they had to agree to.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
So, but before that, can I direct at least we get the contract, since we have not seen it?
Is there a second? Oh, I don't know.
If we're okay with emailing it, I'd be fine
Yeah,
with us.
that's-
being emailed.
that's
We don't
some-
need
I'll
to
send it
present
to
Deja vu all over again.
Wouldn't need to be.
I know it is.
It wouldn't need to be presented in a meeting.
No, I'm not asking
Yeah.
for that.
No.
Okay. I'll second Charlie's motion. All in favor?
Aye.
I-
Thank you.